Welcome to a battlefield of minds. Two grandmasters face off where every move cuts like a sword. One mistake, and it's over. This isn't just chess, it's war, disguised as strategy. Let's dive in, move by move, into this epic clash. Gundavaa plays d4, pushing a central pawn, like a commander seizing ground. Instantly, signaling to Wesley, so that White intends to fight for space and initiative. Wesley answers d5, meeting the charge head-on with calm control. Establishing an iron grip on the center and refusing to concede any easy advantages. Gundavaa thrusts c4, offering the queen's gambit and daring Wesley to accept. It's a provocative invitation to open lines and test Black's resolve. Wesley replies chicks. The Slav defense erected quietly and solidly, saying, "I will take the pawn, but not collapse." Building a pragmatic fortress on the light squares. Gundavaa develops f3, bringing a knight to the center, with purpose and heartbeat. Preparing to fight for f5, and to support the long-term assault. Wesley develops f6, mirroring the knight and keeping perfect symmetry. Wesley's setup hums with coordination and an unwillingness to be rushed. Gundavaa slides qc2, istihu, a flexible queen move that eyes e4 and c4, keeping options open for central expansion and subtle pressure on Black's camp. Wesley executes dxec4, accepting the gambit pawn and pocketing material like a tactician, daring White to prove sufficient compensation for the sacrificed pawn. Gundavaa replies qx4. The queen swoops back to regain the pawn, and immediately aims at both queenside and kingside targets with quiet menace. Wesley develops bg4. Pinning the knight and injecting tension. The bishop's pin is a small spear that threatens to unravel White's coordination. Gundavaa responds nbd4, calmly reinforcing the pinned knight and preparing to reroute pieces, refusing to be bullied by the pin or by greed. Wesley plays nbd7, completing piece development and keeping flexible options to send knights to c5 or f5 when the time is right. Gundavaa fianchettos with g3, preparing bg2 and fortifying his king, launching a slow-burning plan to control long diagonals and bolster the center. Wesley answers e6, a straightforward pawn move that cements Black's center and opens lines for bishops while maintaining solidity against White's plans. Gundavaa places bj2 and then finishing the fianchetto and eyeing the long diagonal like a sniper. White's kingside now hums with latent power. Wesley develops b7, preparing to castle and keeping his setup compact. The bishop eyes the center, while Black prepares to finish development. Gundavaa castles tucking his king safely and signaling that the battle for the center and flanks can begin in earnest. Wesley castles mirroring safety and balance. Both kings hidden behind pawn shields as the game moves from opening to an intense middle game. Gundavaa plays qb3, probing b7 and increasing pressure on black's queenside while keeping the queen active and flexible for tactical shots. Wesley answers nb6, repositioning the knight to block white's queen and c4 and f4, maintaining solid defense and counterplay options. Gundavaa supports the center with e3, fortifying his pawn chain and opening lines for his dark-squared bishop to join the fight. Wesley strikes with c5, breaking the center and challenging white's pawn structure. Black is not content to wait and begins active operations. Gundavaa captures dx5. Opening files and seeking clarity, he trades to simplify the center and to test black's piece placement. Wesley recaptures bxf5, bringing his bishop to life on an aggressive square, where it eyes white's queenside and supports future central operations. Gundavaa aggressively plants nephew, launching a knight into enemy territory to create tactical threats and to needle black's coordination. Wesley calmly retreats b2, stepping the bishop to a safe square and preparing to reconfigure his forces for the coming skirmishes. Gundavaa doubles the pressure with rione, centralizing a rook and indicating intent to play for e4 or to exploit the opened e-file later. Wesley counters with b6, flicking his bishop to a6 to pressure c4 and to harass white's pieces, creating tactical frictions across the board. Gundavaa reroutes ndf3, reinforcing the central knight and reconnecting his pieces, ready to contest the critical central battleground. Wesley brings recate, placing a rook on the open file and signaling serious intentions to contest the c-file and to activate his heavy pieces. Gundavaa plays bd2, defending c3 and coordinating his pieces while trying to blunt black's mounting pressure on the queenside. Wesley slides q7, wundisien, and candidate kodolo cleavage, connecting rooks and centralizing the queen, ready to support pawn breaks or join the kingside assault when opportunity strikes. Gundavaa thrusts a4, expanding on the queenside to open lines and test black's pawn structure, a bid for space and initiative. Wesley leaps n4, sending a knight into white's camp with venom, creating tactical threats and forcing white to reckon with the intrusion. Gundavaa replies b5, counterattacking and targeting weaknesses while trying to destabilize black's coordination and keep dynamic balance. Wesley repositions bd6, bringing a bishop to a commanding square and preparing to support both defense and potential kingside operations. Gundavaa captures bxb6, ripping open the queenside and forcing structural concessions. A sharp blow that creates new targets. Wesley recaptures xb6, opening the a-file and accepting an unbalanced pawn structure that promises dynamic possibilities for black. Gundavaa plays reckon, lining up rooks against black's c-file and trying to seize control of the open avenue toward black's position. Wesley installs nc5, placing the knight on a strong outpost to harass white's queen and to dominate critical central and queenside squares. Gundavaa slips kotatu, clandestine, and you will take ein sipskill, repositioning the queen to a safer square while keeping pressure along diagonals and coordinating with rooks. Wesley pushes f6, a blunt pawn thrust to challenge the e5 knight, and to blunt white's central ambitions. Increasing kingside tension. Gundavaa strikes b4. Counter-punching on the queen side to pry open files and to undermine black's knight on c5. Sharp play all around. Wesley captures bc5. Trading a bishop for a knight and injecting friction into the center while opening lines for further action. Gundavaa retakes c5. Recapturing material and keeping the balance tense. His piece is still active despite structural wounds. Wesley replies f5, accepting an altered pawn structure to gain open lines and central space while preparing to press forward. Gundavaa advances b5, pushing pawns urgently to create counterplay on the queen side and to sap black's structure of its comfort. Wesley captures b5, slicing through white's pawn front and eliminating a dangerous passer. Surgical and decisive. Gundavaa recaptures xb5, opening the a-file and accepting structural damage in exchange for open lines and active piece play. Wesley lines up rcd8, doubling heavy pieces on the d-file and preparing to flood the center with rooks and any tactical motifs. Gundavaa brings Ardon, contesting the file and trying to stifle black's potential infiltration while keeping his own pieces coordinated. Wesley places qf6, centralizing the queen to pressure f5. Target the king side and connect operations with rooks for a looming strike. Gundavaa plays qa2, and consolidating his queen to defend key squares and to coordinate with his rooks for defensive resilience. Wesley smashes e4, a powerful pawn thrust that detonates in the center. In pawn, zeitzing space and converting activity into a concrete initiative. Gundavaa trades Erkstein, exchanging rooks in an attempt to reduce black's overwhelming activity on the open files. Wesley recaptures Erkstein, keeping the rook on the dominant file. Ensuring black's heavy pieces remain prime for the offensive. Gundavaa retreats Ardon, pending in Suez, and Nikin, Abodazian, returning his last rook to contest the d-file and to hold the line as tension boils over. Wesley invites rd3, the rook penetrating to white's third rank like a saboteur, aiming to damage pawn structure and create decisive threats. Gundavaa shifts r4, Mongolian in Understesen, redeploying a rook to bolster king defenses and prepare to parry incoming checks and tactical shots. Wesley plays h6, a simple but important prophylactic move, creating luft for the king and preventing premature g5 ideas from white. Gundavaa captures bc4, zeitzing a central pawn and simplifying the game in a bid to cool black's relentless pressure. Wesley slides rb3, a rook leap into enemy lines that eyes b5 and second-rank weaknesses, signaling the beginning of the final squeeze. Gundavaa retreats bg2, pulling a bishop to a safer square and attempting to regroup amid heavy fire from black's active pieces. Wesley advances rb2, doubling pressure on the second rank, and cutting off white's queenside rook from easy defense routes. Gundavaa plays qc4, centralizing the queen to shield critical squares, and to keep tactical checks alive while searching for counterplay. Wesley tucks kite, a small king move that removes potential checks, and prepares to let his pieces finish the job with surgical calm. Gundavaa thrusts h4, an aggressive pawn shove to open lines toward black's king. The last attempts to stir trouble before the end. Wesley replies Kiev. The queen slides into an authoritative central square, coordinating threats and suffocating white's remaining hopes. Gundavaa probes with qd4, checking lines and hunting for perpetual possibilities or tactical nuances to escape the tightening noose. Wesley calmly retreats qf6, refusing chaos and maintaining the superior structure and piece activity that steadily grows into dominance. Gundavaa repeats qc4, stubbornly probing for a drawish repetition, while keeping the queen active in hopes of survival. Wesley answers q5, consistent and patient, keeping the pressure at a low boil and refusing to allow white respite. Gundavaa again plays qd4, persistent, in search of drawing resources. His queen dances to keep checks on the board. Wesley smashes rxb5, capturing a pawn and breaking open white's queenside, transforming positional pressure into material and decisive threats. Gundavaa replies raune, trying to activate his rook and create counter resources. But the tide is clearly turning against him. Wesley moves kak7, a calm king step that keeps lines safe, while his pieces close in like a pack of precision hunters. Gundavaa advances g4, a desperate attempt to create chaos and pry open lines around black's king, courage in the endgame heat. Wesley answers qc2. The queen hops to c2 with deadly intent, eyeing infiltration points and coordinating with rooks for the kill. Gundavaa pushes h5, a brave pawn push to pry open the king side, trying to force complications before the net tightens completely. Wesley lends arbont e1 a lightning strike along the rank, delivering a check that fractures white's defensive hopes and forces concessions. Gundavaa captures x-bone, forced to exchange rooks to stop immediate threats. But each trade only accelerates his collapse. Wesley retakes qx-bone is. The queen sweeps in with check and regains material, while maintaining relentless pressure on white's exposed monarch. Gundavaa's king flees, kachat-u, b, retreating into the corner in search of safety, while Wesley's pieces coordinate the final encirclement. Wesley returns qc2, persistent and surgical, repositioning the queen to maintain threats and to keep white's king under constant surveillance. Gundavaa nervously walks kj3. The white king ventures forward into danger, attempting to escape, showing desperation and bravery in equal measure. Wesley pushes b5, activating a pawn majority to open more lines and to create unstoppable passers in the queenside finale. Gundavaa strikes a4, A last-ditch counterpunch to open lines, and hope for tactical tricks around black's king and central structure. Bike I. Wesley responds QC4. Centralizing the queen to control escape squares and stifle every attempt at white counterplay with chilling precision. Gundavaa offers K5. Placing the queen into the fray to create checks and harass black's forces. Clinging to any scrap of hope. Wesley repositions N7, bringing a knight into defensive and offensive balance. Tightening his grip on key squares and cutting escape routes. Gundavaa plays Kg6, penetrating with the queen to seek perpetuals or distractions. But black's coordination remains rock solid. Wesley answers Nf6, redeploying the knight to cover critical squares and neutralize white's fragile threats with textbook accuracy. Gundavaa plays Bf3, bringing a bishop to shield the king and to interpose against checks. A final effort to hold the fortress. Wesley strikes Ni4, a tactical knight jump delivering a lightning check that tears at white's fragile defense and forces concessions. Gundavaa takes Bix4, retaking to silence the knight and reduce tactical fireworks. But his position is already dangerously frayed. Wesley recaptures Q4, and Inestayan said he captures Q4. The queen lands centrally with devastating effect, converting coordinated pressure into decisive material and positional gains. Gundavaa plays Qa5, offering checks and clinging to active possibilities with gritty determination as his options shrink. Wesley pushes B4. A relentless pawn smash creating a passed pawn and suffocating white's limited counterplay with unstoppable momentum. Gundavaa shifts Qb6, attempting to chase counterchecks and to slow the pawn avalanche. But black's forces are perfectly synchronized. Wesley advances Qc4 pawn. The queen dominates the center and restricts white's queen while shepherding the passed pawn toward victory. Gundavaa thrusts 5. A fiery attempt to open lines and to spark tactical complications. A last gasp of defiance in the dark. Wesley calmly captures x5, neutralizing the threat and converting white's sacrifice into material and a clearer path to the end. Gundavaa checks Qd6. A desperate tempo-seeking check hoping to wriggle free or force a blunder, heart and courage on display. Wesley retreats kite, sidestepping checks with ice-cold calm, and letting his superior pieces do the work as the finish line nears. Gundavaa captures Qs F8, snatching material back in a fleeting flicker of hope. Though the structural collapse remains irreversible. Wesley powers B3, advancing a dangerous passed pawn that now looms as a decisive force, bearing down on white's last defenses. Gundavaa checks Q5, delivering a last harassment to the king, and buying a sliver of time as the board contracts ominously. Wesley interposes Q white, blocking coolly and precisely, neutralizing checks, while keeping the passed pawn's route to glory unobstructed. Gundavaa slides Qb4, Pensteinen Ashur, repositioning in search of perpetuals and trying to harass black into mistakes. his queen a lone warrior now. Wesley centralizes QB5, Nixon Mo Olmidonich Potion. The queen takes command of central squares and cuts off escape, orchestrating the final mating net with clinical grace. Gundavaa repeats coup-fight, desperate for repetition and survival, clinging to the last technical resources while Wesley's plan advances. Wesley sidesteps Kaksaven, the king moves calmly into safety, while the Black Armada prepares the final coordinated strike. Gundavaa trees Q8, offering checks and producing trouble as long as possible. The fighter's spirit still vivid, amid vanishing options. Wesley replies Q6, delivering a slicing check that turns defense into offensive pressure and forces the White King into the open. Gundavaa shuffles Cap3. The monarch runs out into the open, looking for shelter. But squares are dwindling fast under enemy control. Wesley glides Kitsi, repositioning for final strikes and sealing off escape routes, while patiently waiting for the last combination to fall into place. Gundavaa plays K5, throwing his queen into desperate interference and looking for any drawing tricks to prolong the nightmare. Wesley lands QF3K, a decisive checking blow that shreds White's last hopes and exposes the king to inexorable threats. Gundavaa staggers K2 Tedious. The king flees into a corner with nowhere safe left. The position is collapsing under coordinated pressure. Wesley captures QSKJ4, Personian, removing White's final pawn shield and converting full control into immediate mating or winning material advantage. Gundavaa shows QB5, a final forlorn checking attempt to harry the Black King and to summon miracles from thin air. Wesley closes with QHRE, the ultimate thunderbolt, a final check that ends the struggle and forces Gundavaa to concede as Black claims are ruthless. Precis victory en Weston, Kasanu and Jazema win, Tonmayet Precis victory. The video ends here. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your time. Please don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel to support me. Thank you again, everyone. See you in the next video.